Hello friends, welcome in or welcome back, it's lovely to see you. As you might know, I've been a doll collector for several years now, but only recently did I actually start looking at the BJD blind boxes, even though they had been vaguely on my radar for a while now. While looking at all of the series that were on pre-order though, there was one that especially caught my eye for its distinct street fashion aesthetics and design direction. And that was the 10,000 Escape Plan series by Heartbeat Moment, or Throbbing Moment, depending on how literal you want to be with their name. Being new to this side of the hobby, I didn't have too much information on what was actually happening during their production period, and what was happening as they arrived at their new homes, if not for the community and the discords that were so diligent about keeping up with it. As such, I wanted to share some of the information in a place that would be accessible to other people. Bear in mind that this is all my personal understanding, and so it's important to take what I say with a grain of salt. The company that produced these dolls is a brand new one, and I think it's reasonable that there would have been bumps and issues along the way, and I only want other doll collectors to be able to purchase them while being informed. Or, if you're new to the hobby, then I think it's important to know that any problems that might be a part of your doll are not usually the standard. This video isn't actually meant to sway you one way or the other on whether you should purchase them, and it's not supposed to make you feel bad about having bought them or anxious about them coming. Despite any issues, you are still within your right to love them and their designs, and at the end of the day, that is the part that matters the most. Let's go over some of the background on this series. So the Modian, or Chinese crowdfunding for the 10K project, originally began on February 18th, 2024, with the initial goal of 100,000 yuan, which is just under 14,000 USD and 20,000 Canadian. Their design statement was as follows, as quoted from the Kika Goods page, which was one of their distributors. Even if chained and trapped in a cage, we must pursue freedom. Be prepared to join the escape plan. Between reality and ideals, an escape game is about to take place. Their cast of characters were distinctly different from the style of a lot of other dolls when they were announced. Going over them quickly, there was the gray wolf, the purple cat, the yellow leopard, the blue puppy, the red bunny, the pink fox, and to finish off the base set with the hidden was the red demon. And then there were a number of bonus dolls: pink puppy, the snow leopard, and angel bird. Now for one, what made them different? They had a taller body type compared to other dolls of their scale, giving them a different feeling if you wanted something that wasn't necessarily with chibi proportions, but also not the 1/6 scale doll size and price. So for comparison, here is my redressed red bunny, next to the 1/6 scale T series, the 1/12 scale Do-Re-Mi Band series, and the 1/12 scale Season 3 Bonnie. Now for the second point. It's fairly common for doll stock to be very frilly and cutesy, but this series had a different feeling with their aloof expressions and edgier style of clothing. They were detailed with functional zippers and tiny chains, and just all around had interesting sculpts, and for these reasons I think these dolls really resonated with people. Now for the funding rewards, additional bonuses were pretty generous for them, and in my opinion they may have been a little overambitious for a new company. Regardless though, some of the Modian unlocks included the following. They had extra hands for dressing, an extra bone accessory, blank face plates with open eyes, anti-stain suits, several pairs of hands, extra bodies, 3 hanging card dolls, which are unique releases that are cased in a clear window and card backing, while 2 of them were recolors of the existing designs of the puppy and the leopard. The angel bird was a completely unique design, a battle-made outfit, socks, heels, leggings. By the end date of March 30th, the Modian had been supported by 4,358 people. It's important to note that this number didn't even include the amount of people who were ordering through others and combining their orders so that they could support the Modian even though they were overseas. They had absolutely crushed their goal, earning 3,837% of what their initial funding goal was, and they unlocked all of the bonuses that were listed. According to some of the people I spoke to, they crushed every goal within just a few hours after their launch date. This level of excitement and support was revolutionary. Other successful doll Modians I looked at didn't reach nearly this level of funding, and often had a smaller scope for what funding goals they had available. So as the manufacturing process started after, there were a few different problems that occurred. I'll be covering the one that I could find and was told the most information about, but there were worries about how the face printing looked, the length of certain clothing items, and so on. It's important to note that the dolls won't always translate 100% with their concept art, but that's a pretty reasonable caveat, especially as you go into the finer details. I think there was something noteworthy about Heartbeat Moment's response as well, though. So as the prototypes for Angelbird emerged, people quickly noticed that the corset was printed. For all the other details that appeared possible for this project, that seemed like a bit of a discrepancy in quality. This reply is only translated with Google Translate, but I still want to read it out and give you at least part of the picture. Regarding the waist corset, when we took the promotional pictures before, the factory said there were no holes and suggested printing. It was recommended to take pictures of sample clothes first. We thought it meant that holes could be drilled for extra money. We talked with them later and they told the factory it can't drill 1mm holes at all and can only drill 5mm holes. We're actively thinking of ways to fly to the factory to see where the process cannot drill holes. If the production capacity is up to it, we can't make it. If you see something suitable, you can recommend it to us. While it could be one thing, if the company had always intended for her corset to be printed, the way that they responded made it seem like this was also misaligned to their personal vision, and was a factory limitation, as they seemed like they wanted the corset holes and were asking about information for a suitable solution. Angelbird's corset was fixed by release, which leaves room for speculation on why it was initially claimed to be impossible, but really the important takeaway here was that on the outside it seemed like there was something of a communication error and discrepancy between the creative vision and the manufacturing side of things. Post-production, these issues seemed to become even more glaring. The dolls were slated for a shipping date in the July to August range, so when late July came around and Chinese netizens began receiving their orders, the scope of how much they promised seemed to really bite them on the nose. At first, posts emerged talking about minor issues. Problems within sculpting that didn't quite fit the stylization of the art, like the hair wasn't sharp enough or pointy, and those were rather minor and personal complaints. But as more pictures showed up, there were a myriad of problems that became to be expected from the boxes. This included deformed parts, particularly with the knee joints, head and hair pieces, loose stringing and poor quality elastics, paint splatters, marks, and stains on the dolls and the clothing, clothes that were unhemmed and the raw edges would just come apart, lumpy paint jobs on the hair, dirt and dust specks appearing within the paint job or in the plastic itself, uneven coloring, particularly on the tan bodies and the hidden red body, a very, very strong plastic smell from the doll and the clothing, and because of the fabric printing, the socks for the blue puppy would just come to fade or disappear over time. While these probably would have been acceptable on their own, all of these mistakes kind of came together and were making these dolls out to be a bit of a disappointment in quality when the people who backed this project were incredibly excited for the concept. It became increasingly hard to get excited when you weren't sure if the package you'd been waiting months for might just end up as duds. Now that said, those were the minor issues, and so what were the larger issues? In some occasions, dolls would be missing their clothing entirely, Essex would be pinched shut, and body parts could not be removed, despite the fact that they came with a plentiful selection of hand options. Dolls would sometimes have stability wires to try and add structure to the legs, but this was incredibly inconsistent as some dolls would have wires in both, in one, or none at all, and the wires were kind of dirty. Foreign matter would be found in the packaging, like loose screws, drill bits, and on the worst occasions there was a chewed up beetle nut, and some packages also had bugs. As a whole, the quality control and assurance was found to be kind of lacking. The expectations people had for this series were really let down. So by mid-July, the distribution was halted due to these defects, and the fulfillment expectation turned to August. So how did the company respond to this? It's not as though Heartbeat was silent throughout the whole thing. On the contrary, I think they did try to be fairly transparent. As of early August, these were the things that they intended to work on as they went forward as a company, and so here are some of the points that they covered. They addressed the slow customer service response, and explained that they were inexperienced with how the Modian platform's customer response channel operated. They claimed to have visited a variety of manufacturers many times and based their decision on the following parameters. Quality assurance must meet relevant standards, production experience in making toys with bigger brands in the past, satisfaction in delivery capabilities, and a delivery time that must be met so that their consumers can receive their products in a timely manner. However, they claimed that there were many difficulties in producing the designs that they created into a real-life project. So the manufacturer didn't have a complete understanding of the design due to the complexity of the products, their bonuses, and so on. They claim to have been trying to improve the production process, materials, and barriers while recalling the worst-case scenarios like the foreign matter found in the boxes. So going forward, these were the points they had as a solution. They would work to create their own after-sales team to shorten the wait time between customer service and, in general, optimize the process. They would conduct surveys regularly to understand fan evaluation of the service so they can improve in the future. Through their official media and channels, they encouraged fans to suggest questions and suggestions to them so that their dedicated team can respond and follow up as soon as possible. They also asked fans to send products with the foreign matter back so that they could provide adequate compensation. Now, though their response covered a handful of concerns from purchases, it didn't really cover certain issues. Some of those being the strong plastic smell, the loose stringing, and so on. Some of those things were fundamental to a basic BJD that didn't really have anything to do with the complexity of the design itself, but didn't seem to reflect that the manufacturer had any experience actually working on this style of toy. I think it's important to note that I don't think the series is meant to be a scam. I don't think this company meant to be malicious. Their concepts were incredibly unique, and for that reason, I do think that there was an earnest thought and care that was put into having a selection of dolls that met a stylistic niche that other companies hadn't really taken in the same way. That said, there's only so much behind-the-scenes knowledge that we have from the outside, and it is my opinion that they were overambitious for a new company and didn't have the correct expertise or guidance to execute the ideas in a way that matched the quality that everyone was hoping for. I do hope that they won't give up on the scene though, and I hope that they will try again with a project that might be more achievable. But the damage control from here on and the collective unease that people have towards brand new companies is gonna take a while to overcome. So on that note, I would like to emphasize that this bad experience does not speak up for all new companies. It's completely understandable if you do want to err on the side of caution and purchase from more established companies, though I also think that this is a hobby space where it's important to show that there's interest and support for smaller series with new visions. The success of the 10K Modian showed that there was so much interest for dolls that broke out of the norm of being frilly and cutesy on chibi-style proportions. They showed that people liked the option of taller dolls and dolls with an edgier style. We've already been getting prototypes and concepts with leggier dolls, and at the end of the day, I think 10K did do good things for the landscape of the hobby, even if their execution didn't really match up to their vision. Now, there was one other thing that was brought up to me as I was asking around about the information, and I wasn't really sure where to put it because it's mostly a design choice thing, but I think it's information that's worth considering, and that does have to deal with the Snow Leopard's original design. In the original hanging card concept, she was intended to be a tanner version of the base leopard, however, she was supposed to have a new outfit. And then, without too much information afterwards, this new design came up. The Snow Leopard theme is very, very cute, and reasonably though, people were disappointed that the singular tan doll presented as a bonus purchase got lightened. And not only that, the unique outfit design that was originally presented was thrown out and now her clothes was the same as the regular leopard, only recolored for a white and blue color palette. This was her final rendition here. With the lack of tan dolls and dark-skinned dolls in this space, I think it's fairly understandable that this caused some unease. She was a hanging card, making her specifically available for purchase, and in this specific subcategory of dolls where the gimmick is blind pulling for the doll you want, to have a doll that was tan that you can guarantee, to have that changed and taken away can be a little bit off-putting. I don't know if this is like a total deal breaker, but it was something that I wanted to mention just in case that was something that mattered a lot to you personally. So I have Angel Bird all dismantled in front of me, and I have the Red Bunny off to the side. Now, I have already taken them out of their packaging because the warning of potential bugs was a little too scary and a little too risky for my liking. Now, I would like to clarify again that Angel Bird was a hanging card doll, which meant that she was encased in plastic with a card backing. And the Red Bunny was a confirmed listing from Kika Goods, and I figured that going through Kika as their distributor, important to distinguish that they are not the manufacturer, that I would have the best chance for quality assurance. So I would like to emphasize that if you are going through other means, if you are going through, say, AliExpress listings, there is always a risk that you may have with the quality assurance. So I opted to go through them this time. You can use my code GlassesAreGift10 for 10% off your order if you so choose, but otherwise, let me take a look at everything. Now, the reason that she is dismantled here is because the parts don't really want to fit together that well. So she actually isn't too bad, but if I place her head together, she does survive the shake test. No, she doesn't. I was going to say that she does survive the shake test, but as soon as a little bit of pressure is put on that seam where her hairline meets the front hair or even the face, then it does kind of just fall off. It feels very loose, and it doesn't want to quite sit in there nicely. Now, that said, that is not something that is completely unfixable. Some nice blobs of putty in here did the trick for me when I had them out for display to air them out a little bit. And the reason I did that was because Angelbird reeked of plastic, and especially these guys. These shoes here and the Red Bunny shoes have a very, very strong plastic scent to them. It doesn't smell like any kind of paint that I've worked with. It almost smells more like car paint. It is very, very strong, and even soaking them in soap and water didn't really get rid of the scent fully. Now, that said, Angelbird herself, the doll herself, did have a little bit of an odor to her, but it is mostly gone now after being washed and after sitting out for a little while, for about a day and a half. So here's her face up close. You can see that she has gray eyeliner, black eyelashes, and in general very delicate facial features. Her eyebrows are quite thin, her mouth is quite small. Her cheek blushing was actually more pink in person than I realized. I think it comes off quite faintly in photos, but it is actually quite pink in person, and it does add a very cute touch to her design. I'm not sure how well you guys can see it, but her hair does start off with a white and then goes into a more pearlescent silver. However, as you get into those more detailed parts at the end, the paint does get a little clumpy. On the inside of her head, I did notice that there are some scratches and is a number etched into there. It says 6, though I don't know what that's about. So that is the front part, and here is the back. So they are these two white twin tails that are tied off and end in these lovely wings. The wings are very detailed. I'm actually very fond of the way that these look. I think that they actually did a really beautiful job with the execution of the twin tails to wings concept. And once again, like the front hairpiece, it does transition into this pearlescent color at the end. On the inside of the head, I'm not sure if you guys have already noticed, but there is kind of a big old chip that's in the head there. Nothing that is too visible though, so that is a defect that doesn't personally bother me. Without the faceplate, I think that the hair does fit better, but still kind of falls apart if there's a little too much force. Now, this was the Angelbird's body, and as I was unboxing them, the Red Bunny leaned on her a little bit. She did end up leaving behind these red little paint smears on her stomach here, which I haven't been able to get out with just soap and water, so I will probably need to try like a magic eraser, is what I would imagine. Regardless though, let's take a look at the body itself. These ones I had already changed the hands for to accommodate a different outfit that I was using, because I ended up switching this body with the Red Bunny. Their original hands are just these little open palm ones. The joints do have little jagged edges to them, making them not terribly smooth, which when we compare my oof dolls, you can see that is a much cleaner cast. Now, do bear in mind that the UF Doll Doremi series, this is from an established brand, and the 10,000 Escape one is from a brand new brand, so I'm not too certain on what the expectation should be, but from what I can tell, the joints do function the way that they need to. It's not a terribly invasive detail. For her points of articulation, you have the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, the torso, the thigh, knees, and foot. You might have noticed as I was talking about that though, that her shoulder is a little bit dislocated. And that is because the knot for the arms have poked outside of the torso hole itself, making it so that her shoulder cannot quite sit flush to the actual gap that has been carved into the upper torso. So that is something that is a little frustrating, because that is something that I will have to take the doll apart for. The stringing does leave something to be desired. While they can stand on their own when they don't have a head on, the dolls do have a tendency to fall over once they actually have their head. So these dolls did actually originally come with a metal wire that was stuck through their legs here. Both of them had a silver wire that was going from their thigh out into the joint for their knee, and I opted to take them out. The other one that I had taken out while unboxing did start leaving marks on my hand. I believe prior to washing her, there were parts where it had started rubbing off onto her body as well. So you can see that the weight of the head and the fit is not terribly great. But that's not something that I've not dealt with before, so not a crazy point of contention. The actual doll herself, I'm actually quite fond of, and I do actually quite like her. I would say that really my biggest complaints have to do with the stringing of the body, and the plastic does feel kind of cheap in comparison to the other dolls that I've unboxed now. So these dolls do retail for around $20 to $35 depending on where you're looking, but I would like to say that I have heard the argument that these dolls are fairly low end, that they are the same price as Playline dolls, and so your expectations shouldn't be that high. However, I do think that there is trust to be formed between doll manufacturers and doll collectors, or people who purchase them, right? Even when you're looking at Playline dolls, the thing that got Rainbow High the most attention when they were at their peak was that the quality of them was so phenomenal. They had multiple colors rooted in their hair, they had functional zippers and functional pockets, and those things were the things that really stood out. And I think that it's okay to want, a certain level of quality and expect a certain level of quality for what you're paying for, even if the price might not be crazy, right? Even if it's not like $100 dolls or $200 dolls, I think that it's still okay to expect and to want something that feels like it is fully worth however much money you paid for it. And that's why I want to emphasize that, yes, these dolls aren't crazy expensive when you compare them to collector brands and stuff like that, but they had a vision and they did crowdfunding for it, and people supported that vision expecting a certain level of quality, and I think that it's not crazy to feel disappointed about it. Now, for me personally, I actually really love the base doll herself. My issue really comes from the accessories. When I opened this package in particular, it felt like a wave of that car paint smell hit me. And again, these little rascals were a big part of it. However, the rest of the clothes does seem like it might be okay. So she comes with her one piece, which has big frills for like a tutu style skirt, a cross in the center, one neck strap, and these little layers of fabric in the back that form a train. Here is her headpiece with more tulle and strap to go over her head, and a string of pearls. These are her two armbands, which have these silver straps around them, and little buckles, her leg warmers, which have frills on both ends and crosses at the main part. The fabric for this one feels very strange. I can't put my finger on what material this is, but it's not very pleasant. Here is her choker, which I actually quite like. It has a little heart and key on it. She comes with socks, but to be honest, they're so small, I wonder if they'll actually fit over her feet. She gets one other knee-length sock, a pair of very thin, very sheer panties, waist wings that are in that metallic pearly silver, her little corset belt, and there is supposed to be a white ribbon to be able to lace up the corset, but I honestly don't know where it went. So that is completely my bad. So let me get her dressed, and then we'll take a look at what she looks like in her outfit. So as I was trying to dress her, I noticed that the underwear is sewn in a little bit of a strange way. On this side that I think is supposed to be the longer side, like the part that your legs and hips go through, it's very crooked. It's very crooked, almost like one side is like a boxer brief. However, I can see why she needs them because her dress just flies up. As I thought, her socks might be a little too small for her. In comparison, here are the socks that I've been using for Red Bunny. Very small. I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to get them on. So here's Angelbird mostly dressed up. There were some things I had to forego, like the socks were just a little too small, and the corset I still could not find the ribbon for. So here she is mostly. I have put a little bit of putty in her hair because she was falling apart a lot. So the unfortunate thing about the shoulder being messed up is that because her dress is open shouldered, that you can see that her arm isn't sitting nicely. But I actually do quite like her a lot, even dressed in her stock clothes. Her skirt flips up like crazy though. But I actually do quite enjoy the dazed and angelic look that the whole outfit brings together. I like the little details of the pearls, of the pearl paint. The leg warmers are really cute. It really reminds me of like early school Precure with the big bulky shoes. I enjoy the small details like the actual little key on her choker and these straps actually able to move around her arms, and the different layers of fabric, the different textures. The train is smoother and the actual tutu is a little bit more coarse, and then the top almost feels kind of plasticky. Not my favorite texture for the top, but still I enjoy how they've used different textures or different techniques to bring detail to the design. That's something that I do find really cool. It's just that there are some things that aren't very pleasant. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the way the material for the leg warmers and the top feels like. Her head kept falling apart when I was even just trying to say that I'd put her together until I stuck a big blob of putty on her forehead. There are some things that are just fundamental to actually having a doll that is easy to dress up and easy to put together and just easy to handle that I think this one is kind of missing. Even the plastic for the body feels like it's a little bit cheaper, and now that I have opened a handful of these blind box BJDs, I kind of have a point of reference of like, the Doremi series is one of my absolute favorites now. I own so many of them after I originally said that I wasn't interested in them. And you know, the Bonnies, I was really amazed by just how soft and velvety they felt. Those little things that I think are kind of important to the experience of having a doll that I just think is kind of missing the mark here. Not that I think that she's a bad doll, I just think that if you're going to get her, then it is something that you should be prepared for, that, you know, there are going to be small things like the fact that her shoulder will have to be restrung a little bit just because of the fact that the knot is sticking out of her shoulder. The fact that some of the joints are a little wobbly and they might flop over if they're too top heavy. Things like that don't make them very easy dolls to have as your very first one, and I think that that's something important to keep in mind because, as I had covered in the background part of this video, these dolls are distinctly different in their style. They are a lot edgier, they have chains and straps and all those things that kind of, you know, resonate with people who are wanting a different style than just the frills and the lace. So that is something that I want people to keep in mind if they're considering this series, that there is room for those kinds of mishaps to happen. I think the only complaint that I'd brought up in opening my T series, which was my first venture into these blind box BJDs, was that one of the hair pieces was falling off quite a bit, which again, easily solvable with a blob of putty, and the fact that one of them had like the tiniest little black mark on the back. But with this one, it was like, even just being near the other doll while I was unboxing left paint marks on her stomach. For the most smooth experience, I don't think that this one is that great of an option just because they are not that easy to pose. They are going to fall down, they're going to fall over, especially if you take out the stability wires like I have. The tension in their stringing isn't enough to keep them up. And also her skirt keeps flying up, and that's not my favorite thing in the world either. I would like, you know, buyers to be able to keep those things in mind and understand what you're looking for in those kinds of doll experiences. The other thing that I don't think I really mentioned was that the knees are kind of warped, and you can see that they don't really form fit that well around the parts. Some knees are okay, like this one looks fine, but this one is more clearly warped, and you can see that there are gaps. And with all that said, I think that, if you love these dolls that much that you're willing to take on those little bits of risks, and mind you, a lot of the issues that this doll in particular has are easily fixable. You can warm up the joints and you can shape them back together. You can put in blobs of putty so that her hair isn't falling apart all the time. You can sand down some of these things so that they aren't as jagged. I can put in a new stability wire or just redo the stringing if I want to fix the posing. But when you're new to the hobby, if you are like, okay, I love every single one and I want to take the plunge into buying all 6 of them, that might be a lot. And those are just things that I would like you guys to keep in mind if you're interested in buying this series, if you're interested in getting into the hobby, because those things are not just things that you want to keep in mind for this particular doll, but also for any of the dolls that you're purchasing. What kind of experience are they actually offering? If they're going to come with these little defects that kind of add up and might impede your enjoyment of it. And, maybe none of these things bother you. Maybe her skirt is flying up and that's dynamic to you. Then more power to you. That is also a completely valid way to take the situation. I just hope that, if you guys are going to consider them, then just keep those things in mind. So this video has gotten pretty long as is, so I'll be cutting out my opinions on the Red Rabbit, though if you're curious about that and my more in-depth feelings on her, then do let me know and I can always do that in a separate video. To end off, however, if you are still interested in the series after everything I've told you, then I do want to at least compile some tips that were suggested to take care for these dolls. So, number 1, please allow your doll a few hours at least to air out if they arrive with a strong odor. It can also help to wash your dolls, and if you do that, then it is better to take them apart before washing so that you can keep the elastic and the S-hooks in good condition and to avoid any mold growth. Number 2 is marks and debris on the surface of the doll can be cleaned up with magic erasers or melamine sponges, or sometimes even just a pencil eraser. Acetone is good for removing factory sealed paint, but you don't really want to use it on just the plastic because it can also cause damage to it. You should be mindful that certain pieces of the dolls are likely to leave stains or transfer paint. For the clothing in particular, it's a good idea to rinse and wash the clothing to remove any excess dye, or to do a color fast to help set the clothing dye. I'll leave a link in the description to an article that details how to do that. The other part that can be susceptible to leaving paint is the shoes, which can often leave marks on the feet. So it's good to either have your doll wear the socks or a stain suit. If those didn't fit though, then it might be a good idea to forego the shoes and find another pair that might fit. If the hairpiece is loose with the faceplate and has a tendency to fall off, then as I've mentioned a couple times earlier in the video, a couple blobs of putty or sticky tack can help keep those pieces in place. Unfortunately, the best way to fix the loose stringing and the floppy joints is just to restring the doll. I personally opted to rebody both of mine, but so it might be good for you guys to know that as long as you have the proper neck card for the 10K series, then they are compatible to most other doll bodies. I am using penny box ones, so that was my preference. There are tutorials on how to restring dolls though, but I do suggest you do your own research there since I am not too well versed in that. For pieces that are warped or loose fitting because of their shape, you can carefully heat them up with a hairdryer on lower settings to help shape them back to place. But you should do this only after thoroughly cleaning your doll, just because the dust and debris with heat is not always going to be a good combination. Lastly, the wire in the legs can be removed or kept just depending on your personal preferences. I personally chose to take them out just because they were leaving some residue behind, but you can always replace it with a cleaner wire or with a sturdier wire, or choose to restring your doll to help with the body movement. With all that said though, thank you guys so much for sitting through this video. It's a little bit different than the ones that I've done before, but it was a fun little research project. At the end of the day, I'm quite happy with the ones that I have, And I hope that if you ordered some for yourself, then when they arrive, I hope that you do still fall in love with them too. They are very cute dolls, they're very sweet, and they still deserve a loving home despite all of their little problems. Hopefully you don't get bugs in your package though. And with all that said, I'll see you guys next time, whether that be in a stream or a video, and please take care. Bye bye!